Next one. Now we're going to get to some more uplifting stuff. Game and tech workers are unionizing, and this was from LaborNotes, and we covered a LaborNotes story a couple weeks ago that was really good. And Colin's been talking about that. The educator up in Brookline, Mass. So here's another one. Video game and tech workers dropping the U word. Yeah, baby. Tender Clause workers and allies showing off the T-shirts they printed by hand with help from a stripper strike organizer, and we famously are supportive of the stripper strike in NoCal in northern LA. Okay, so at noon on July 17th, Robin's co-workers and she at the video game studio Tender Clause stepped away from their desks. Two of their work-from-home colleagues walked into the office unannounced. Their out-of-state colleagues joined virtually on a laptop. They passed out a letter and read it aloud together. Dear management, we are proud to announce that we are forming the Tender Clause Human Union. 2 weeks later, we obtained voluntary recognition, making Tender Clause the fourth video game studio with a certified union in North America. Our company is small with a unit of just 11 workers, but our victory joins a nationwide wave of organizing in games and tech. Before 2020, there were virtually no unionized workers in these two industries. Today, there are more than 3,000 of us in the CWA alone. Case in point, on the very day we delivered our petition, quality assurance workers at Blizzard Albany launched their own union drive. This small unit would create a second union toehold in the gaming giant Activision Blizzard, known for titles like Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. Trouble in Paradise.
Yep. So, which we know. Designer Dave worked at Blizzard.
Correct.
And
friend
he
of the
talked
network,
about the terrible treatment of staff there and the harassment, and they had a whole thing recently, had to fire a ton of people. So, and then there was the like ritualistic firings where they cut like half the staff, like, one go.
Yeah, well, usually again when they finish a game, that's typically what they do. When they finish producing a game.
Yeah, but this was for for a game. No, this was for Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was like a whole game company that has like multiple games that are continually worked on, right? And then they just fired a ton of people. Like, and technically Activision owns Blizzard, so you're getting this weird like double corporate structure, but Blizzard's terrible, to staff in general.
Right.
Well documented.
So she explains. So Robin explains. I think it's a she, but I can't even say. Robin explains. Game workers make our living building video games. We create 2D and 3D art, compose audio, run quality assurance tests, code game functionality, write character dialogue, design game mechanics, perform customer service, manage communities of game players. Through our labor, our industry has become a financial giant, forecasted to generate $200 billion just this year. All right, and that doesn't even count the professional gaming industry. All right, workers in high-tech jobs are often stereotyped as ping-pong playing elite, but the reality is more complex. Some in our industry do make six figures, but many are paid well below the cost of living and in the country's most expensive cities. Okay, and most of the QA and customer service workers barely clear minimum wage. From Google to Activision Blizzard, our workplaces are divided between full-time employees and an underclass of temps, vendors, and contractors. Work-life balance is notoriously poor for both groups due to crunch, long stretches of overtime in the months or years before the launch of new software. And harassment and discrimination run rampant in workplaces traditionally dominated by straight white men. We unionize Tender Clause as a wall-to-wall unit to reduce crunch, bargain for sustainable career development, and diversify our hiring process. Tender Clause was founded with the intention of being a progressive workplace, and management has made many efforts to act fairly, but we aren't immune from the dynamics of the industry. The vision of a better workplace can only be fulfilled when workers ourselves have a direct say through our union in the decisions that affect us. The problems in games and tech aren't new. Workers have been organizing informally for decades using salary spreadsheets, class action lawsuits, whisper networks, press exposés, and more recently, walkouts. Some of these standalone actions have yielded moderate wins, and over time they develop consciousness in the power of collective action across our industries. When you work in a 0% unionized industry, it can be tempting to remain in this realm of informal organizing. A one-off action has a clean start and end and feels less risky than organizing a union. It's easier to get coworkers to commit to do something only once, and you can get away without forming a proper leadership structure. I'm going to stop right there because Colin is probably screaming at his computer right now. Yes! Because this is the same thing that we've been talking about with the online events and the online conferences. Where is it all going towards? What are we building towards? What's the goal? What's the ask? What's the big win?
Right. What are your demands?
But this cuts both ways.
Yeah.
Standalone actions are easier because they don't fundamentally challenge the balance of power between workers and management. It's hard to hold on to the wins. The moment things cool down and managers no longer feel watched, they can quietly retaliate against troublemakers and restore the status quo.
Yeah.
So fellow organizers and Robin used to refer to suggesting unionization as dropping the U word. They told themselves that if an informal action went really well, they might escalate to unionizing, but that perfect time just never seemed to come. Last fall, after 3 years of their organizing with volunteer groups, a friend gave them some tough love. If you're calling it the U word with me, how could you be ready to say it to a coworker? This was the kick in the butt that I needed. Over the following week, I reached out to coworkers who had participated in collective actions, and I ripped off the Band-Aid. How'd you like to form a union? Within a week, we had a core group of organizers. A few months later, we formed an organizing committee. We made mistakes, we learned a lot, and had plenty of ups and downs. But by June, we had 100% support in our bargaining unit, and by July, we had won union recognition. Sometimes being bold and upfront makes all the difference. Nobody else is going to unionize our industries for us. The grassroots organization Game Workers Unite emerged at an industry trade show in March 2018 in protest of a roundtable called Union Now: Pros, Cons, and Consequences of Unionization for Game Devs. The moderator, a former CEO and then head of a toothless game developer advocacy nonprofit, was clearly not neutral, and as more than 100 angry game workers flooded into the event, it became clear that she was the only one in the room concerned with the cons of unionizing. After the conference, organizers founded Game Workers Unite chapters across the world and funneled our energy into organizing. By running trainings, forming connections with established unions, and building networks of agitated game workers, we sowed the seeds of future unionization. In 2020, the CWA connected with grassroots networks just like Game Workers Unite and brought the support of a major union to the North American game and tech industries. They pooled resources and staff organizers under their campaign to organize digital employees, which is CODE. This effort bore its first fruit in December 2021, when workers at indie game studio Vodeo formed, or Vodeo, I don't know how that's pronounced. Formed.
I think it's Vodeo.
Vodeo, North America's first game workers union. They were followed in 2022 by quality assurance workers at the Activision Blizzard subsidiary Raven Software, which you had just mentioned a little while ago. Outside of video games, the tech industry has had a similar arc. Grassroots Tech Workers Coalition emerged in 2014, advocating for collective action and unionization in much the same way as Game Workers Unite would. Unions at Kickstarter and Glitch won recognition in 2020. And in 2021, workers at Google and other Alphabet subsidiaries formed a militant minority union affiliated with Code CWA. Recently, they surpassed the mark of 1,000 members. So game and tech workers are suffering, and that's reason enough to unionize, right? But there are also strategic benefits for the rest of the labor movement to organizing high-tech workplaces. Why? Because technology's overhauled the working world. Consider high-tech surveillance in warehouses, digitized offices in schools, the apps used to gigify many jobs. Google search, Amazon Web Services, Twitter, used so pervasively that despite private ownership, they've begun to resemble civic infrastructure. The bosses who control the production of these technologies wield more power than most world nations. For workers, the result of all this tech has been to make us less powerful, more isolated, and more closely monitored. But that's not inevitable. Technology could be liberating if the decisions on how it's used weren't left to a small handful of millionaires and billionaires.
Agreed.
By unionizing tech, we can leverage our collective power to improve the world. Imagine if we refused to use our skills to exploit gig workers, target kids with in-game purchases, or wage wars. The first step is for game and tech workers to reject the lie that we are not like other workers and join our siblings in the labor movement. Strippers and gamers. Okay, again, getting back to our friend Chris Smalls, who was hanging out with them this past weekend. A surprising friendship is flowering between the Southern California game workers and strip club dancers on strike at Star Garden, another group that's not like other workers. Again, makes me think back to the Google commercial. Oh, I'm sorry, the Vince Vaughn movie, Silicon Valley.
Right.
Oh no, what is that? What it was called? The one where they become the internship. Or no, there was some kind of him and Owen Wilson become interns at Google. It's hilarious, but it's a walking commercial for Google. It's a hysterically funny movie. But one of the premises is that they have like a dancer, a stripper / dancer, teaching dance class to the Googlers, and then they all go to a strip club, and one of the guys sees her and he like falls, oh my God, that's my dance teacher. Organizers with game workers of SoCal have helped produce stripper strike signs and buttons, and we frequently walk their picket lines. Organizers from Stripper Strike helped the Tender Claws Union run a t-shirt making party and supported game workers at Activision Blizzard when they walked off the job in protest of harassment and race and gender discrimination. Solidarity. The contexts are different, but the striking strippers and the workers at Activision Blizzard are fighting for the same vision: safer, fairer workplaces. We have more in common than we think. And I was right. Robin is a sheep. Yep. Awesome. Just great stuff. How they did it, overcoming the fear of the word union and the U word, as they called it. Gamers and strippers are a perfect union, 100%, because gamers traditionally are like shut-ins, but they certainly love the pretty ladies, and usually they don't get their attention because they tend to go for the jockey guys. But if it's changing and it's flipping on its head, God bless them. God, I love hearing that. Man, it's just about 30 years too late for me, but my nephew and
I wanted to showcase
my kids. God bless you.
There's a company called their streamers called the Yogscast, and recently for the last I think week or so, they've done like back-to-back streams for indie game development studios, right? Less than 5 people per game worked on like all of them.
Wow.
And they picked like a whole series of like 100 or whatever, and like, you know, stuff like, and all these companies are like putting the games on sale and stuff like that. But yeah, they do this like every year, the Yogs. So
Yogscast?
If you Google it, yep, YOGSCAST, Tiny Teams is what they're calling it. But just a cool way to showcase the smallest stuff. I think they didn't count like freelancers, right? Which are like all those people you talk about even on a normal game that are like, yeah, if you're coming in to do the voice of a, you know, weird, you know, rat like creature, you know what I mean? Like, they're not gonna keep you forever. Like, they're gonna freelance work you. But anyway.